Good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Mercedes Witowski. I'm the Executive Director at the New Jersey Council on Developmental Disabilities. It's so great that you are all joining us today as we welcome today's bipartisan Legislative Disability Caucus session that's focused on school to adult services for students with disabilities. Closed captioning and sign language interpreters are available for today's session, and this session is being recorded. You'll be able to locate the recording along with all previously recorded sessions on the caucus webpage, and we will get that information in the chat for you. You'll also be able to locate legislators who are Disability Caucus members, the supporting organizations. You'll be able to sign up for mailings and submit comments or questions about any topic, including today's topic. Panelists, if you can just remain on mute when you're not speaking, that will help us with the recording. Let me start off by thanking Senator Teresa Ruiz, our Senate Majority Leader of the 29th Legislative District, for her commitment as co-chair of this caucus and for taking the lead in this afternoon's meeting. I'd also like to thank and welcome other members of the legislature and your staff, especially our key co-chair members of the caucus, Senate Republican Leader Bucco, Assembly Majority Leader Greenwald, and Assemblywoman Ora Dunn. I think we see folks from Senator Gopal's office here with us today. Thank you for joining us. Senator Stanfield, Senator Corrado, Assemblyman Moriarty's office, also Assemblyman Greenwald's staff. I don't know who else I missed, but if you, my screen is a little bit limited at the moment, but thank you all, staffers and members of our Assembly and Senate, for joining us. The Disability Caucus, as you hopefully know by now, serves as a bipartisan forum within the legislature for lawmakers and your key staff to consider the impact on the disability community when shaping all public policies. And we know that this can be accomplished when we work together, when we have a greater understanding of the complexities and the issues impacting individuals with disabilities and their families, because we work with, and as part of the caucus, are supported by people with disabilities, their family members, and the organizations that serve and support them. I'd also like to take the opportunity to acknowledge that October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And for many students, employment, we hope, is the next step in their transition. When we talk about transition from school to adult life, it's likely the most significant transition a student and family will face. I first heard the term of falling off the cliff as it was related to life after special education. And it's a very daunting term and a daunting image to literally fall off a cliff. But this has drawn our attention across New Jersey and across the country. And so much has been done and needs to be done to prevent that cliff experience. I know that you're all acutely aware of what happens when students age out, but what we're hoping is that we set up the safeguards and the various measures that create some level of protection during this cliff drop. We need, no doubt, to remain vigilant in our work on creating the person-centered supports and services for students as they graduate. And I'll be back to talk about some of the safeguards and introduce today's panelists to you. But first, let me welcome Senator Ruiz, who has demonstrated leadership in this caucus, and we're grateful for all that you do on behalf of individuals with disabilities and their families. Senator Ruiz.
Good morning, Mercedes, and to my colleagues who are on here.
No, I was gonna,
and someone cue me and let me know if
name, but yours does, right?
Okay, Assemblywoman Spate's office, you have to mute yourself. Okay. Let me know if the Wi-Fi is not great. I will switch it over to things else. I apologize if you see me a little jumpy. I'm not imbalanced. I'm traveling in a car down to the School Boards Association meeting down in Atlantic City, but I wanted to be sure to jump on today for something that, quite frankly, I feel predates me and probably will post-date me and all of us on here, that we just do not have enough in New Jersey for when our children age out of our special ed systems. It's a consistent story that we unfortunately hear during the budget crisis. It is a personal story that I hear from many families. It is one that is gut-wrenching and compelling. And I feel that a sense of urgency is not where it should be. We have made huge strides and investments in making sure that workshops and that programming and that embeds people. But the fact of the matter is that when there is a parent who they themselves are thinking about their next phase of life, which is not physically being here, and the prognosis, if you will, for what their children will have, will they be able to live independently? Will there be a safe space? Will there be taken care of? Can they find employability? Is there transportation, access to healthcare, kind of a wraparound service that steps in artificially when that parent is no longer physically around? It's something that I'm committed to. I hope to learn from everyone here on this morning's call as well. But I can tell you that we are far from having a place for everyone to feel safe. And I know this to be true because I've served on the budget committee for over a decade, and we hear it consistently every single year, unfortunately. It's hard enough to have a parent navigate the special ed system during school years when there's actually a framework in place. Imagine that time lapse when there isn't a framework in place. And so it's a space that consider me an advocate and ally and a public policy individual to lean into this. It requires fortitude, courage, and certainly significant amount of resources, but we fall short when we don't do what is in the best interest of protecting every human being in this garden state. So to everyone, to the advocates who are on the call, to the individuals who will share their personal experiences, thank you for the work that you do, for letting us into your life a little today so that we have kind of that human capacity to understand that we're not all the same here in the state of New Jersey, that when policy is being created, that's why it's critically important for all of us to be sitting around a table to have those discussions so that lenses of different images are shared. And to all of my colleagues on the call, and for us to remember that, we do a lot of good things, and oftentimes many of us, including my office, hey, you forgot to put someone on this board membership that represents, these families. So this should be something that's present and forward and on the front of all of our minds. And so to my co-chair, Assemblywoman Dunn, Senator Bucco, and Majority Leader Greenwald, to their commitment and time for serving on here, and for every staffer who's on here. We can do better and we must do better. And so thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ruiz. And better is I guess the operative word today. We are excited about some of the things that we are doing in New Jersey, especially when we look across the country at some of the states that even fall short when it comes to this particular area. And I know that at the Office of Special Education, the New Jersey Department of Education, they have that mission to provide educators, families, and stakeholders with the technical assistance, with the professional learning in evidence-based practices, and access to instructional materials and resources, but most importantly for those students who are achieving the last stage of their educational entitlement. In New Jersey, just to put some perspective, there's approximately 247,000 kindergarten through 12th grade students who receive special education. In the past 2 years, we've graduated close to 20,000 students who have transitioned or graduated from school to adult life across almost 600 school districts. As I mentioned earlier, as students reach the end of their educational entitlements, there are mazes, not one maze, but often multiple mazes to navigate. And right now, there are a variety of ways to access critical information about transition services, including the Department of Education's own electronic website that lists school to adult life transition and its toolkit. We also, one of our supporting organizations, the Bog Center at Rutgers, offers an introduction training around PCAST, which is person-centered approaches to schools in transition, that teaches about the fundamentals of school, of skills and how to plan and prepare students to implement person-centered approaches to school life and adult life. And then recently, it was announced that the New Jersey Division of Developmental Disabilities adjusted and amended the age of students who are eligible to receive services. And they made this adjustment in the New Jersey Family Care Comprehensive Demonstration Waiver. It was approved just this past April. And while this change allows individuals between the ages of 18 and 21 who have graduated from or are no longer eligible for services that they're entitled to through their education authority, they can now receive services through DDD. And while many of us applaud this change, like all good things, there are negative ramifications. So we add another layer and another level to the maze and to the complexity in those transition years. We are waiting for formal written guidance from state officials on the implementation of this change, but we are concerned that students may be inappropriately encouraged to graduate before their educational entitlement runs out. So we need to continue to watch as this unfolds. We'll ask our legislators to keep an ear to this as you get calls within your districts, because we need to make sure that no student prematurely leaves their educational entitlement. I also want to share briefly about an announcement last month. The New Jersey Department of Education Office of Special Education was notified of its successful application to the United States Department of Ed funding, and it's related to transitioning, a grant to help students transition and to support students during that transition phase. This is an $8.6 million grant over the next 5 years. The grant, which is funded through the Disability Innovation Fund, is designed just on point for what we're talking about today, to increase the number of New Jersey children and youth with disabilities who experience a successful transition while achieving their post-secondary goals related to competitive integrated employment and other transition outcomes. The primary focus of this grant is really to improve interagency collaboration among staff at Department of Ed, at Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, at the New Jersey Department of Human Services, the New Jersey Centers for Independent Living, and local education agencies, as well as state and private agencies serving individuals with disabilities. I think this is a critical opportunity for New Jersey, because the many mazes that we've spoken about today are just another form, hopefully, of this grant giving us a more straight line to accessing services as students graduate. This 5-year grant title, if you want to look it up, is called Collaborations in Transition NJ. And it will also establish a transition hub website modeled after Tennessee, I believe. It's called Transition Tennessee. So something to check out. And this is just the beginning. The first year will be planning, and the next 4 years will begin the implementation. There is so much other work being done across our caucus collaborating agencies. And before I introduce our next, our panel, our terrific panel coming up, I also want to acknowledge some additional members of our caucus that have joined us today: Assemblywoman Lopez, Senator Ed Durr's office, Assemblyman Varelli, and Assemblywoman Spite. Thank you for being here. And I think I now see Assemblywoman Dunn. Thank you also for being here. So exciting to introduce these next three speakers who will help walk us through some of the current initiatives and their recommendations for school to adult life transition. The added bonus for me today is that we'll get to hear from a recent graduate and how he's transitioned from school to adult life. But first, let me introduce you to Jerisa Maseko. Jerisa is the Director for Planning for Adult Life. It's a program facilitated by the ARC of New Jersey. She is a family life educator and has been with the ARC for 17 years of her 31-year career. As a youth, she began her long history of advocating for those who have no voice. She was sparked by the need for someone to step up and speak out, and that was to advocate for her aunt, a person with a developmental disability. I know Jerisa well, and I know this passion drives her to continue her work of supporting self-advocates, ensuring that their rights are protected, that their voices are heard. She works with students and their families in creating plans for transition from schools into adult life. I wish we had many more Jerisas and many more schools that she could impact. We appreciate your being here, Jerisa, to get us through the beginning of our panel discussion, and I'll turn it over to you, Jerisa. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today. As she mentioned, as a family member and a professional in the field, I'm intimately connected to ensuring that people with IDD become contributing members to society. The Planning for Adult Life program is a result of advocacy efforts for families to help them to adjust to the new service delivery system changes that took place in 2013. This change affected approximately 14,000 individuals in our great state, already receiving services and those that are graduating or will be aging out of school. These changes that were made it imperative that students maximize their entitlement to transition services afforded to them by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. With a grant from the New Jersey Council on Developmental Disabilities, we've been able to provide a critical resource to students in special education by providing an original curriculum that has an intense focus on employment. It covers topics like why work, job awareness, how to get a job, and importantly, how to keep a job, as well as several transferable skills which are enforced throughout the 8-week intensive course. When a child approaches the age of 14, their child study team arranges a meeting of several professionals to discuss with the child and their parents what type of individualized transition services are needed. At that time, there should be assessments of the child's interests, their preferences, and their abilities done. This team then works to set a long-range plan of courses to obtain measurable post-secondary goals. Throughout the child's education, they are to work on functional vocational goals, employment goals, and community living goals along with their standard core classes. There's a yearly checkup in an annual IEP meeting where the student's progress is assessed. These transition goals are mandated in order to acclimate the student in their community by providing them with experiences that help them develop in decision-making, communication, and expressing boundaries. All of these skills are critical for living an independent life in their communities. In addition, schools are provided pre-employment transition services through the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services. It's a program that provides 5 categories of support, including self-advocacy, job exploration, work-based learning, workplace readiness, and post-secondary college counseling. Schools, in particularly those that are in remote areas, have informed us that providers of these services are few and far between. In our experience, several companies are also apprehensive to providing access for students to obtain these employment experiences, whether it be concerns of liability or effects of the public health emergency. These experiences aren't provided or at a very limited level. I'd like to express our gratitude for all of the great work that the Department of Education has done to support students receiving transition skills and services. The department's online materials, especially the transition toolkit, as Mercedes mentioned earlier, has had an invaluable impact on students and families preparing for post-school secondary options. While transition services have improved for many students, the quality can vary greatly from district to district, with some offering little community-based experiences or failing to consider college as a realistic option. College has never more been as accessible to people with IDD than it is now. And we need to ensure that it is presented as a valuable and viable option for these students. This type of future planning is necessary and provides the framework for accomplishing a goal that is realistic than previously thought. To navigate society and all the different challenges that students with disabilities have to overcome in everyday life, there is much more help needed, particularly for those who are trying to navigate employment. In 2022, people with disabilities had an unemployment rate of 8.2%. compared to the 3.5% rate of their non-disabled peers. People with disabilities make up 20% of New Jersey's poverty rate. Being able to access to employment and consistent support to handle the nuances of a job, like understanding different environments, understanding work cultures, can be difficult for these students, but necessary for their success. We need our businesses, communities to open up their doors to our students so that they can join the workforce and contribute to society and earning a living. We need schools to put more emphasis on employment and grow employment education services under the transition umbrella so that students leave school ready to enter the workforce. Parents are often unaware of post-secondary options that exist for their students with disabilities. Schools must be mandated to provide information on all post-secondary programs designed for students with IDD. Parents don't know what they don't know. That is why it is critical that the school communicate with families about the reality that exists after graduation. Schools are the gatekeepers to the next phase of life for these students and these young adults. I'd like to thank you again for the opportunity to share this information today. The caucus's dedication to garner feedback from stakeholders is a catalyst for New Jersey's consistent improvement of its special education services. And we appreciate your continued support for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. Please do not hesitate to contact us for any assistance. The ARC of New Jersey is always ready to work alongside schools, families, and legislators in guiding our students in transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerisa, and thank you to the work that you do at Planning for Adult Life and the ARC of New Jersey and your dedication and work around transition. Again, if you had the privilege of working with Jerisa in this program in the districts that they are able to be in, you would wish that you had that opportunity across all of our districts. Are there any questions? And I want to also welcome Assemblywoman Lopez and Senator Vitale to our discussion. Any questions for Jerisa at this time? We've got a full house today, so if you're Assemblywoman Dunn, I see your hand is up.
All right.
Oh,
Thank you. I figured out the raise hand now and the unmute, so we're in good shape. Thank you so much, Teresa. That was very, very helpful, particularly the statistics that you provided to give us some insight into what's being experienced or the impact here in New Jersey. So my question for you, because I couldn't agree more that the education arena needs to kind of make stronger linkages with the outside employment world, right? And either fostering those opportunities, informing parents. What do you see some of the barriers? Is it the employers themselves, or do we need to do a better job at those partnerships? And does it vary? Does it depend on the region of the state?
I think that across the state, that all communities, business communities need to open their doors and to be informed or educated even on the benefits of providing these type of services in their local communities. When everyone contributes to this exposure, they get better employees, more faithful employees, more dedicated staff. There's a cross learning of what people with disabilities are like, as well as the individuals with disabilities learning about those communities. And so if we could work to build those connections and networks, that would benefit our students greatly.
Thank you. And, I view my role as a legislator as taking part in that, right? In the education, communication. I know that, recently we did pass some incentives for the business community, and perhaps those haven't taken root yet. And so if there's more that we should be doing, my phone is always reach me by phone, shoot me an email, but would love to hear more on the role that we can be playing here in the legislature to foster that. So thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, Assemblywoman Dunn, and thank you, Jerisa, for responding. I appreciate your being with us today, and I know you're going to stick around, so you'll be able to answer any additional questions as we move into our second speaker. I could spend probably the rest of our time together telling you about our next speaker, but then I would deprive you from listening to him. So, LaDerek Horn. LaDerek Horn's remarkable journey is a testament to the power of determination and resilience. Diagnosed with a learning disability in the 3rd grade, LeDerick is a dynamic spoken word poet, a respected author, and a passionate advocate for people with disabilities. As the grandson of a prominent New Jersey-based civil rights leader, LeDerick uses his gift for spoken word poetry to open doors to discussions on equal opportunity, self-determination, and hope for individuals with disabilities. His work addresses the challenges of all disabilities, uniting the efforts of diverse groups to achieve substantive systemic change. LeDerick Horn, along with Bill Davis, are the recipients of a grant from the New Jersey Council on Developmental Disabilities, which are often seed grants to begin to get some work moving in our state. And this particular grant focuses on increasing access to information to Black New Jersey residents with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. LeDerick's influence extends far and wide, reaching students, educators, legislators, policymakers, and business leaders and service providers. He has graced stages at the White House, the United Nations, Harvard University, Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week, and numerous state departments of education across the United States. LeDerick is also the co-host of Black and Dyslexic podcast, where he, alongside Winifred Winston, empowers students, adults, parents of children with dyslexia and other language-based learning differences. I said I wouldn't take up all of your time. There's more I could tell you about LeDerick, but I'm going to let him share his words with you today. Thank you and welcome, LeDerick.
Thank you, Mercedes. And thank you to the caucus for giving me a few minutes to be able to share a bit about the work that we're doing and some of the recommendations we have that have come from this grant, particularly as it centers around transition. So in the introduction, it gave quite a bit of my own story, but I just would like to say that I do come to this work as a person with a disability. And in the beginning of our meeting today, we were talking about that cliff, that transition cliff, and it immediately brought me back to what it was like as a high school student, facing transition and really not having any plan. And the way that I described it was like there was this abyss between where I was and what the adult world was supposed to be. And I kind of took a step of faith and said I wanted to try to go to college, even though I couldn't write a grammatically correct sentence and my reading skills were subpar. But I was fortunate that my IEP team recommended me going to a disability support program that really changed my life. First one at Middlesex County College, and then I was able to transition and go on to New Jersey City University. And then out of that, the Department of Ed, the New Jersey Department of Ed Office of Special Education, that gave me an opportunity to start sharing my story and giving advice to young people with disabilities. And that led me on the career that I'm on today. And I'm very grateful to the council for the opportunity for Bill Davis and I to be able to be awarded this grant around increasing access to information to New Jersey's Black residents with IDD and their families. It's a 2-year grant, and we're closing in on the end of the 2nd year, but we've got opportunities because it is sort of has seeded some of the work that we've done to be able to continue that work going forward. And so just some of the things that have really sort of stood out to me, I guess, throughout the course of my career, but also very specifically in the work that we've been doing with this grant, is that when it comes to letting families and young people know about what supports and services are out there, it still seems very clear to me that word of mouth is still very, very important. It's a very, very powerful tool. And when it comes to our Black families, because of our society's larger history of segregation, the way that the traces of that still stand today, a lot of times Black families aren't getting the opportunity to have these one-on-one conversations in other communities where they know about resources. And so one of the things that we did sort of early on in the grant was we wanted to make sure that we were providing examples of role models, mentors to the families we were working with. And so one of the things we created was a series of videos called Black History and People with Disabilities that is available as a playlist on the council's YouTube channel. And we were highlighting in there Black folks who were examples of excellence, who had disabilities, or folks who were allies, Black folks who were allies to the disability community. We also, as part of the grant, we started 2 initiatives. One is called EPIC, Building a Village of Support. And within EPIC, Bill Davis and I, we go into school districts, and we're currently working in Piscataway. We connected with some families in Asbury Park, and we just got approval to bring Epic to East Orange schools, where we work with students with a variety of disabilities to be able to really do individualized transition support, where we can really learn from the students and the families about what their transition goals are. And then with the help of our transition specialists, you're going to hear from one of them, Lori, in a little while. And actually one of our EPIC students is here, Gary, who's going to speak next. We're able to connect those families and those young people with the supports that are in line with whatever their transition goals are. And then we also started a group called the New Jersey Black IDD Consortium, which is a group of parent advocates, leaders from different organizations. The group is overwhelmingly Black, but we have a common goal around this piece around improving access to information so that we can improve the outcomes of folks who are both Black and have IDD in our state. Another thing that is, I think, a bit of a frustration and that we've been working to do throughout the course of this grant is that we realize that oftentimes organizations or entities that have a focus around supporting folks with disabilities oftentimes will not sort of incorporate and understand the value of race, and particularly supporting folks who are Black, who have disabilities, right? So having this very sort of targeted work. And again, we commend the council for giving us this initiative to really support Black families. And then when we're connecting with organizations that have a focus around supporting Black folks or doing social justice work, disability tends not to be a key target in their agenda in the work that we do. And so just last week, I was taking part in a meeting of the New Brunswick chapter of the NAACP. And it was this idea around how disability needed to be a key focus of the work that they do. Because these organizations are around improving the lives of folks who are people of color, Black people. And whether you're looking at social justice issues, education issues, a lot of these organizations have education committees. There's a tremendous intersect when it comes to supporting folks who also have disabilities. Through our work, we also heard very early on and throughout that a lot of our families were having challenging accessing the Perform Care application, and Perform Care sort of gives our family access to benefits. And then when you're connected to Perform Care early on in life, when it comes time for you to transition into adult services through DDD, the handoff can be much easier if you're already plugged in the Perform Care. And yeah, we just heard that the application, and and I've seen it, it's like 20 plus pages long. It's very difficult to be able to navigate. And so we partnered with a community-based organization called Nassan's Place that does work with families who have young people with autism in Essex County. And we set up these in-person Perform Care navigation sessions. And so we're working with over 50 family members and young people with disabilities to help them. We've helped them to get through the Perform Care application. And the supports that are needed to be able to get through that application, like many different sort of bureaucratic structures that lead to access to supports, both in school and in the adult world. For some families, it can be less challenging than others. And so for like many of our families, we had to provide childcare, right, to be able to give them a few hours where they could sit down and work with someone, in a small group setting to get through that application. And also with Perform Care, it's an application that either is filled out on paper or you have to have a PC, so not a mobile device, but an actual, desktop computer or a laptop. And we've realized after the first session that many of our families did not have access to that technology. And so as part of our grant, we were able to buy laptops and have hotspots and be able to go into the community and be able to set up this technology so they could get through these applications and get access to those services. And so the next thing that also just sort of stands out to me, and this is one of the things that through working with Lori and our other transition specialists that came up, is that a lot of our families as it was said in the presentation before mine, aren't always aware of those pre-employment services that are offered through DVRS. And a lot of our families, and we're a bit discouraged by this, are finding out that they're not aware that they can start accessing DVRS and those services when they're 14. That they're sort of under the impression that DVRS is services that are just available for you in the adult world. And then just the last thing that I just want to touch on is in having this conversation around preparing our young people for the adult world. It is oftentimes really important that we remember that it's not just around experience on like a job site, but also a lot of those soft skills that are important, and that can actually lead to success in the workplace. So those are trainings around socialization, and I know Lori and our transition specialists, they do a lot of work with the students in EPIC to be able to connect them to these sort of services. But yeah, socialization, communication skills, the ability to be able to just sort of organize your schedule, that all of these sort of things, practicing self-advocacy and those self-determination skills can really lead to success. And then just as I close out, I've also had the pleasure through the council to be connected to a housing grant. And I think that one of the things that has become really evident to me is that our families don't oftentimes consider housing as being a part of this transition story, that it's oftentimes when mom and dad are sort of really getting much older than they start really sort of thinking about this housing component. But one of our recommendations to come out of this work is just for our families to start thinking about and developing plans and connecting the services related to this as early as possible. So I'll stop there. And again, just thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share.
Thank you, LaDerek. Thanks for this work and for bringing some attention today to the issues that you've seen in the Perform Care application. When I talk about mazes, that's certainly one of the mazes that students and families find themselves in, and that, if you can help one family through that maze, you certainly made a difference, and I know that you've helped many, many more. I'm going to turn back to members of our Legislative Caucus to see if there's any questions at this time for LaDerek. Assemblywoman Dunn, your hand is still up, so you may have figured out how to put it up, and maybe you didn't figure out how to put it down, but I want to make sure I acknowledge you in case you did have a question.
No, you're right. I forgot. And now I sound like my kids.
That's okay. We'll lower it for you, and then we'll start the clock again for you. Any other
Mercedes, I'm sorry, I can't navigate, but I just want to thank LaDerek for really utilizing his experience and becoming an agent of change in this space, and also identifying the inequities that really permeate regardless specific families in the state: access to childcare, technology, broadband, basic things. Again, if you don't have people from all different aspects to lean into these spaces, that would kind of be taken for granted. That not everyone has a laptop, that we work off of our telephones, that we don't have broadband, that perhaps language becomes a barrier in filling these applications, that childcare, it's just, thank you for just making it so clear that this is why it's so important for so many of us to sit around the table so that we can fill in those gaps where we're kind of creating these artificial family support systems that resource households may potentially have on their own, but that government needs to step in for the families specifically that I represent in my family. Thank you.
Welcome. And just, I would like to tip a hat to Perform Care. We were, through this work, asked to be a part of a working group that's looking to simplify that application and make it more accessible. So I know that group is meeting and looking at how to implement those reforms. But I agree 100%. We need access to these resources to be able to access resources.
Thank you again, LaDerek. Your work we'll get a glimpse of it in just a minute as I introduce our next panelist. And I also want to thank Lori your transition coordinator of the EPIC program, who's joining us today as well. We're going to turn to Gary Bynum. Gary is a 20-year-old young man who attends Middlesex College. So he's followed in that part of your footsteps so far, LeDerick. He currently works at Marshalls and Home Goods in South Plainfield. So if you're in that area, you can stop by and I'm sure meet Gary. He is a stockroom associate. His achievements include making the honor roll in high school, winning gold medals at Special Olympics in the category of track and field, and independently applying and being hired at Home Goods. He has a passion about learning about ceiling fans and how to install them in people's homes, creating characters to make his own cartoons, also known as cartoon animation, drawing, and painting. I had the opportunity to meet Gary a few weeks ago and enjoyed listening to him share a bit about his life journey and some words he used to describe himself. He's going to talk to you a bit more about that today. But I added a word to Gary's list of attributes, and that word was confident. A confident young man that inspires others. I know Gary will inspire us today. So welcome, Gary, and I turn this part over to you.
Hi, I just want to thank the caucus and the EPIC program for allowing me to speak. My name is Gary Bynum. I am 21 years old and I do go to Middlesex College. So the services I received are gaming approaches towards education, which is like a gaming type of therapy in which we play like board games and storytelling games to help develop our social skills in like the real world. We also sometimes do like individuals with just the therapist without any other like other clients. And I started that in 2019 when I was in high school. I also am a part of the DVRS, which just helps me, get, jobs like training. I had a paid internship at Shell's Closet in Hillsborough, New Jersey, where I did inventory with the clothes orders, organized them into which orders need to go where, and then some, customer service CSI. But I didn't really like talk to the customers. I know I just did organization on the computer. I also was part of the SAIL program in Piscataway, New Jersey, which gave me more vocational training. But with this one, you just don't learn like the skills. You actually go out to one of the job sites, which Burlington, Staples, Cintas, even the YMCA was an option. And you also because I did Burlington and the YMCA and Cintas. I'm also part of the EPIC program, and I did an inter-survey. A traditional plan was developed. My input included socialization, procrastination, time management. And the EPIC wanted to make sure I used DVRS, tutors for school, perform care, counseling, and to make sure my resume was up to date, and that I maintain a contact list of important people I meet, including on the website, a webinar here. I'm also a part of the disability services at Middlesex College, for accommodations for if I need like extra time on like homework assignments, or if I need to take a test in like a quieter room, or for notes, I use like a note-taking device. If I don't understand what the teacher is saying, I use that. I'm also a part of a program called the Alliance for Independence, which is another like vocational program. It's in Edison. I mean, it's not part of like the high school. It's like part of like the county. And the difference with this one as well is like they only kind of like teach you the job skills. We don't usually go to like a job site yet. My extracurricular activities include the Children's Specialized Hospital, in which on Fridays, we do like social skills, but they don't teach us the skills. We kind of just, hang out and do like activities like, like drawing and painting, playing board games and like group games where we introduce ourselves and figure out what our interests are. And what's tied to this is Friday Night Fever, which is like the teen night, but we actually go out to different places, like for example, like an arcade or a museum, and do activities there. And like before I mentioned, I'm also in the Special Olympics. I'm track and field and bowling. For track, I do the typical running, and then I also, do the javelin toss. For bowling, we just meet on Saturdays and we bowl. And then if you're like reach a good score, they allow you to come to like the leagues. And I do neurodivergent dance, which was recommended by a family friend, where we just move our bodies around to different kinds of music, not like a specific genre of music. We just like move our bodies around to like a song. And then I'm also a part of Buddy Ball, which focuses on social skills and movement. I mean, like we play like games that you play like your school gym class, like kickball, castle ball, and some like fitness routines. And we also do yoga as well. My strengths include that I'm creative, meaning, I help people come up with great ideas for like designs and like lists. I'm also really good on following through, meaning like if I have an appointment for like Epic or like a doctor's appointment, I make sure I get there on time. I make sure I keep it down in like a calendar or a reminder so I don't forget. And lastly, I'm a very good sport. Like even if I don't win in like Special Olympics or any game, or my team doesn't win, I still give credit to the other person on the other team or the other team in general to show that they did well, even though I did well myself. And yeah.
Well, Gary, if we could use what you've described to us, your life, your best life, because it sounds to me like you're living your life. You as an individual, you've um, determined what you enjoy. You've found your way to many amazing opportunities. And I say amazing as opposed to that maze. So if we could kind of, I'm sitting here thinking like kind of clone the experience that you have and transport that to the other 247,000 students across our state, then mission accomplished.
Thank you.
I'm very, as I said, you all were going to enjoy this, and I really, even hearing you today, you solidify for me the things that have worked in your life. I'm sure it's not all been easy. You've probably hit some roadblocks along the way, but you've made your path clear for our legislators to understand the connections that had to have been developed in order for those things to come about for you, and then your competence and your ability to pull it all together. Gary, I'm impressed. I'm going to ask our legislators to comment on what you heard from Gary.
Again, thank you, the Caucus and Epic program for allowing me to speak. I really enjoyed this.
You did a great job, Gary.
Thank you.
Legislators, let's give a shout out to Gary. Unmute yourself.
Yeah. Gary, great job. And, as I was listening to you, I'm just thinking what came through was such an excellent work ethic. It's about work ethic. And, you know, that's a constant topic of conversation for today's current workforce. They feel there's like a diminishment of it, but you and your exemplary work could really just really shed light on what needs to do, what needs to be done, what needs to be continued. You got me on follow up and follow through. I think, and I see some smiles on this panel, so we know it, you know, sometimes that's a difficult thing to either, you know, to receive or to accomplish. Perhaps it's an example of our crazy world, and that we always are juggling so many things at once. So we can learn from you, and I just really thank you for giving us that real life, real world experience to see what we need to be doing more of to make sure that these opportunities exist. So best of luck to you in your continued success.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And Gary, you're not a team player, you are a champion, and you are reminding us of that right now. And if I thought I was tired, you've reminded me not to be tired and to use that fierce power that you use every single day to go down and advocate under the Golden Dome for so many. So thank you for being my morning inspiration this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate it as well. Thank you.
Going to give any other members of our caucus an opportunity to come off mute. And I see Michelle. You have a hand up, Michelle? Go ahead. Give you a second. Anyone else? If Michelle is not able to unmute, maybe she can put something in the chat and we can
Can you hear me now?
Okay, yes, we can hear you now.
Yay. Okay, first of all, thank you so much, Gary. You are going to be one of the leaders that's going to help get us where we need to be in this fight to move forward and see what life is supposed to look like. So I thank you so much for that. You know, I'm committed to addressing the critical need for state programs that support young people with disabilities as they transition from school to the real world. I have had a number of experiences watching this. I have a number of friends with children with autism and other disabilities and watch them transition. Their children are older now and they're still struggling a bit. So for me, this is, you know, it's personal, right? I want to make sure that our whole state is not only aware of this, but that we help move forward. We need to give these people to the opportunities to succeed, to thrive, to be active, contributing members, because that's what we know that they all want to be. So thank you today for all of the speakers that were on the call. I appreciated hearing their expertise and their unwavering commitment.
Thank you too for having me talk again.
Yes, and I would love to speak to you, Gary. You know, after this call, I would love to get information to get together with you. Together, we can make it
for sure. Yes,
lives, and we can help empowering the individuals to helping them achieve their fullest potential and become the remarkable citizens that they are. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. We will definitely make that connection. Absolutely. So as we close out this hour, I want to again thank all of our panelists. Thank you, Senator Ruiz. This was a real inspiring session today. We do have some takeaways that we heard about communicating to all students. Whoops, I see one more hand up. I don't want to cut anyone off, so please unmute. I can't, my screen is not giving me all the information, but I do see a hand went up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
So my name is Genevieve Spielberg, and my son just ended his education entitlement. And I have the really good fortune of working with Paul Aronson, who guided me in advocating for the legislation that passed that allowed my son to get an extra year of school, which is really fantastic. And I feel pretty good that I've developed a program for my son who's in a day program because he really requires a lot more supports than many of the individuals that have been discussed. But I just would, welcome, well, first of all, thank everybody for being on this call. But, one of the things that many parents with young adults in similar situations have is just, the access to information. And I'm going to just throw out the group home situation in the state of New Jersey. I'm a very active advocate, but finding a source where these places who will take care of our children when we are no longer able because they require more supports is troubling to me, that there is no source, and I don't know how best we can do it. And I would just want to plant a seed with all of you, because being involved also on a support group with other families who have kids over the age of 21, I've heard so many troubling stories about the quality of care and, the vetting process that, how, as a state, how can we protect our children, especially when we're no longer able to, because it's a real challenge. I realize not only for the state of New Jersey, but everybody involved on this call is aware and an advocate and interested in doing better. So just if you can keep this in mind as you move forward, that for those of us whose children will need to go into a group home environment, let's try to find a way to do better so that there's a quality of care and safety.
Thank you, thank you, Genevieve. And I think that brings us to our close, because we are, I'm going to give you the dates for next year's caucus session. January 23rd, April 23rd, July 23rd. Thank goodness for a leap year, keeps the 23rd of those months, and then the 2nd of October. So that's a topic that I'm sure will be important to consider in scheduling next year. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, members of our legislature. We appreciate this hour that you give to us 4 times a year, but we know the work that happens in between is the most significant. So we will see you in January. Have a great end of the year, and we look forward to working with all of you in the coming year.
Thank you.